oversight of the federal voting assistance program. I note that a quorum is present, and without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. Also, without objection, the hearing record will remain open for 5 legislative days, so members may submit materials they wish to be included therein. Thank you, Ranking Member Morelle, members of the committee, and our witnesses for participating in today's hearing. Before we begin, it's not lost on me as a veteran of the United States Air Force who did 2 overseas tours that while we are here today discussing how we can make it easier for active duty military to vote, our troops serving overseas are serving our nation in harm's way on a daily basis. Now more than ever, it's important that we are doing all we can to support our troops who are putting their lives on the line for this country. I'm thankful for their service, and I am praying for their safe return home. Free, fair, and secure elections are the cornerstone of our democracy, and it's our brave service members that defend that right for all Americans. As the committee with oversight authority of the federal elections, it's important that we take a look at the laws and procedures in place for our active duty military voters. More specifically, we'll be looking at the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, commonly known as UOCAVA, and the Federal Voting Assistance Program to provide oversight to determine if improvements are needed. UOCAVA, which was enacted in 1986, is the only federal statute that is solely devoted to protecting the access to vote for active duty military, their family members, and other overseas citizens. UOCAVA has not been subject to significant congressional oversight in over a decade. The Federal Voting Assistance Program, or FVAP, is responsible for administering daily responsibilities of UOCAVA under the direction of the Secretary of Defense. In other words, the FVAP is responsible for helping our service members vote in their respective state and local jurisdictions. Both UOCAVA and the FVAP ensure that service members who want to vote have the opportunity to do so. According to the FVAP, approximately 950,000 active duty military are eligible to vote under UOCAVA. However, not every active duty service member registers to vote. During the 2022 election, 63% of active duty military voters are covered by UOCAVA, both in the United States and abroad, successfully registered to vote. Unfortunately, an even smaller percentage of those who registered actually cast their ballot. In 2022 general election, only 26% of active duty military voters covered by UOCAVA cast their ballot for the election. However, in their most recent report to Congress, FVAP highlighted that active duty military who sought assistance from FVAP were 3 times more likely to cast their ballot. In 2022, the FVAP distributed nearly 200,000 pieces of educational and outreach materials to voters at 105 military installations worldwide. Additionally, the FVAP responded to over 12,000 inquiries to its call center. While FVAP has made strong headway with boosting voter participation amongst UOCAVA voters, there is more that can be done. Every registered American citizen should have the resources they need to participate in our democracy. Our service members who put their lives on the line to defend that same democracy should not be an exception. I hope today we are able to find ways to increase turnout among active duty military voters ahead of the 2026 general election. I thank our witnesses for being here today, and I look forward to having a robust conversation with all of you on this critical issue. Before I close my remarks, I'd like to highlight we'll be test piloting a new closed caption technology during today's hearing. This technology was approved by the Subcommittee on Modernization and Innovation and will soon be available to all House committees. I thank our witnesses for being here today, and I look forward to our discussion. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Morelle, for 5 minutes for the purposes of providing an opening statement.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Loudermilk, and to Chairman Stile, and to thank you certainly to our witnesses for being here today. The Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, or UOCAVA, is a critical component of our efforts to make sure every American, no matter where they live, has an opportunity to vote. The law provides protections for millions of voters, such as requiring states send ballots to voters at least 45 days ahead of federal elections, and the availability of a federal write-in absentee ballot, a backup ballot, essentially that allows overseas and military voters to still cast a ballot in federal elections if their ballot does not arrive in time. And while UOCAVA is a good start, there is work to be done. According to the Pentagon, in 2022, and some of the statistics my colleague just cited, but I think they bear repeating, 15% of military voters reported that they either did not receive the ballot in time or the ballot never arrived. And the voter participation rate for service members was 26%, well below national averages. Additionally, the overall voting rate for overseas citizens in 2022 was an estimated 3.4%, due in part to either real or perceived obstacles to casting a ballot from overseas. At an April hearing, we heard testimony about service members and their spouses never receiving their ballots, others paying out of pocket for a courier service to return their ballot from abroad when they could not access the mail system, and families stationed in Japan whose mail routinely takes 6 to 8 weeks to arrive. And in addition, I spent time along with Chairman Stile in both Japan and in Korea, where we met with members of the United States Army about the challenges they faced in receiving ballots. So we could and we should be working in a bipartisan way to improve access to the ballot for military and overseas voters. Instead, what we've had over the last couple of years is my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have advanced policies that severely hinder ballot access and would disenfranchise service members, their families, and millions of other overseas voters. The SAVE Act and the President's illegal anti-voting executive order would fundamentally disrupt American elections and severely impact the ability of military and overseas voters to vote. For instance, their agenda, their bills, and the executive order would end mail and online voter registration. Their plan also requires voters to register in person at their legal or local elections office, something common sense tells you many military and overseas voters cannot do. If you're stationed in Japan, it's going to make it really difficult for you to register at your local Board of Elections. House Republicans passed the SAVE Act despite overseas voters asking them not to, and despite the fact that we repeatedly on this side of the aisle cautioned them that doing that would make it much more difficult, almost impossible, for military personnel to register to vote. In April, I wanted to invite a witness, a military spouse currently stationed overseas, who could have given voice to the experience of overseas voters and whose testimony we could have easily facilitated. Unfortunately, House Republicans did not want to hear from her, and they denied the request. I'm grateful to the witnesses here today. Thank you for your service to the country and to those who seek to vote from abroad. I'd hoped we'd also hear from voters these laws impact. Pavan Parekh is the clerk of courts in Hamilton County, Ohio. He also served on the Ohio Ballot Board. He's also a JAG officer in the United States Army Reserve who has served overseas, a local official serving his community, and the elections process who has served his country in uniform. He would have made a great witness, would have added to the witnesses we have, which I'm grateful for. Again, my colleagues denied our request to have him appear at this hearing. I hope the committee can hear from him and others like him very soon. I think they have something to add, and their perspective will be welcome. In over 2 years of being in the majority, this is the first hearing held by my friends focusing on military and overseas voting. The VOTES Act, championed by Election Subcommittee Chair Laurel Lee and Congressman Maxwell Frost, is a bipartisan bill which would actually increase military voter access, and we should move that bill forward. As I said in April, Democrats would happily waive this committee's notice requirements to call the VOTES Act up right now to send it once again to the full House. So we have put forward numerous policies that would increase ballot access, and as always the case, there is never any proof to things like what the president has said about voting from abroad and overseas in the last election, because there's never any proof to anything he says about the difficulties in doing it. So let's focus on ways to improve access, and I think we're happy to work in a bipartisan way to expand access to people, and we'll advance legislation to help them. So I want to thank the chair. I look forward to, and I would like to, before I yield back, Mr. Chair, I'd ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from U.S. Vote Foundation, Secure Families Initiative, Blue Star Families, the Association of Americans Resident Overseas, the the American Citizens Abroad, and the Federation of American Women's Clubs Overseas, as well as a letter from the Vet Voice Foundation urging opposition to the SAVE Act and outlining ways in which it would create barriers to the ballot box for overseas voters. And with
Without
that-
objection.
Yes, thank you. And I yield back, sir.
Without objection, all members' opening statements will be made part of the hearing record if they are submitted to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Today, we'll have one witness panel. Both witnesses are from the Department of Defense. First, Dr. Liz Clark, Director of the Defense Services Support Center, who has provided testimony and will give an opening statement. Next, we have Scott Weidman, Director of the Federal Voting Assistance Program, who is here as a subject matter expert. We appreciate you both being here with us today and look forward to your testimony. Dr. Clark, we have read your written statement and it will appear in the full hearing record. I now recognize you for 5 minutes for the purpose of giving an opening statement.
Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Morelle, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Department's implementation of the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, or UOCAVA. This vital law ensures that our service members, their eligible family members, and overseas citizens are aware of their right to vote and have the tools and resources to successfully do so from anywhere in the world. The Department takes this responsibility seriously. With me today, I have Mr. J. Scott Weidman, the Federal Voting Assistance Program, or FVAP Director. Mr. Weidman has been with FVAP for over 32 years. FVAP is the mainstay of our efforts to implement UOCAVA and prescribes the 2 standard absentee voting forms, allowing voters to communicate directly with their election officials to request, receive, and submit their ballots. We also work closely with state and local election officials who administer elections to ensure they understand their responsibilities under UOCAVA. Our focus is on ensuring that UOCAVA voters are informed, educated, and able to successfully vote from anywhere in the world. To do so, we rely on a network of voting assistance officers in the military services and the Department of State to help deliver that assistance. In the lead up to the 2024 election, we trained nearly 3,000 voting assistance officers worldwide. They achieved their goals by educating voters at the local level and ensuring voters are aware of the fvap.gov website, which provides clear, timely, state-specific, and accessible voting information. In 2024, there were nearly 6 million hits on the fvap.gov website and more than 600,000 votes used to state-specific federal postcard application tool to assist them in completing the form before printing, signing, and sending to their state of legal voting residence. An online completion assistance tool is also available for the federal write-in absentee ballot, which serves as a backup ballot for voters who have not received their requested state ballot in a timely manner. There is extensive command support from the military services to increase awareness and messaging regarding absentee voting. Annually, installations support 3 voting emphasis weeks: Armed Forces Voters Weeks around Independence Day, Military Spouse Voters Week in early August, and Absentee Voting Week in late September. These efforts extend information to family members on both domestic and overseas installations through displays, physical and electronic banners, and voter registration drives. Additionally, the military services provide voter registration and absentee ballot request assistance during each election cycle in high-traffic areas, such as at military and family readiness centers, morale, welfare, and recreation facilities, medical facilities, commissaries, and exchanges. To enhance absentee voting awareness directly to the voters, we use targeted communication strategies on social media and through trusted stakeholder organizations. For example, in 2024, we had more than 340 million digital ads displayed, 35 million video views, and over 7 million organic social media content appearances. The FVAP staff works directly with officials at the state and local level to ensure FVAP materials have accurate and up-to-date election dates, ballot deadlines, and election office contact information. We brief national and state election official organizations to ensure they understand their key responsibilities under UOCAVA, including the 45-day ballot transmission and electronic blank ballot delivery options to ensure individuals have time to submit their ballot and to notify voters if their application was denied. We also confirm with election officials that they understand the unique aspects specific to UOCAVA voters and that they, not FVAP, make the final determinations on voters satisfying residency requirements, and that a voter's last address in the United States can be used for voting purposes while overseas. FVAP also provides ballot mailing envelope templates for use by election officials, which helps ensure election materials sent to UOCAVA voters are postage-free. In addition, we actively work to improve UOCAVA absentee voting processes through innovation. Congressional funding has allowed us to provide grants to state and localities to explore best practices, such as improving the electronic blank ballot transmission and the use of digital signature verification. In closing, Mr. Chairman, I thank you, Ranking Member Morelle, and the members of this committee for your outstanding and continuing support of those who vote under UOCAVA protections, and for the men and women who proudly wear the uniform in defense of our great nation. We are truly honored to be with you today, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clark. Thank you both for being with us today. I thank Representative Loudermilk for his assistance in the open. As a veteran, this hits close to home, I know for him, but I think for all of us. I'll recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions. I want to dive into the numbers and just stage set a little bit. If we go back to the 2022 general election, the most recent midterm, according to the U.S. Census, approximately 69% of the voting age population was registered to vote, and of those registered, 52% actually voted. Then we go over to the UOCAVA side, active duty military voters in particular. According to FVAP, the 2022 congressional report, the registration rate was approximately 63%, a little lower than the national average, but only 26%, less than half, actually voted, significantly lower than the national average. I want to use that as a stage setting and then kind of dive in here. How does FVAP retrieve data for its biannual congressional report? I'll start with you, Dr. Clark.
Thank you for the question, Chairman. I'm going to ask Mr. Weedman to provide the specific data for that.
That'd be great.
So after each, good morning, Chairman Stile. After each federal election, we do a series of surveys of active duty military members, the voting assistance officers, the election officials, and state election officials. And then in 2024, we did, for the first time, we worked with the Department of Defense to do surveys of spouses as well to gather that data.
How much does it cost to run that survey and provide the FVAP congressional report? And I'll allow either of you to answer as we bounce between.
No, we'll take the cost for the record, please.
Do you have an estimate as to what the cost is? I would like the number in the record, but do you know what the cost is or have an estimate as to what that cost is?
I don't want to answer because I'm not sure offhand exactly. It's right in the front cover of our report because
okay, we'll track it down. Let me shift gears again. Do active duty service members face unique obstacles? Obviously they do. What is FVAP doing in particular to make sure that people are voting and bringing up that percentage as we look out to the next midterm?
So, Chairman Stile, there's three major obstacles that can make the absentee voting process more difficult sometimes for military members: time, distance, and mobility. From the time perspective, we encourage all military members in January of every year to send in that federal postcard application form so that their local election officials are aware of that they're not at home, that they need an absentee ballot sent to them. And then we also we encourage them to take advantage of the 45-day mailing time. As you know, federal law guarantees that states will send the ballots to the military voters at that 45th day before the election. They can receive it electronically, so in their email inbox, they can have that ballot, print it out, vote it, and then get it mailed back and take full advantage of that.
With our limited time, I appreciate that. With our limited time, let me just dive in. I just got the number pulled, $2.4 million for that report. That seems like a lot of money, but maybe something I'd love a little additional information on why it costs that much, but we'll dive. I'm going to hold that. I just want to touch base on how you're coordinating with state and local election officials to ensure that the ballots are reaching the right jurisdiction. How are you coordinating with state and local officials?
So we work very closely with the state and local election officials from across the country, 55 states and territories in the District of Columbia. Right now, we're in full swing in preparation for the 2026 election. We have the Voting Assistance Guidebook, which contains the voting dates, the regulations, rules, and deadlines for voters from every jurisdiction. And we also have the contact information, mail, phone, fax, and email for all those jurisdictions in that book, as well as on the FF.gov website. And we ensure that all that information is accurate and up to date, so that when a voter fills out that federal postcard application form and it's received by the election official, it'll have everything they need to process the form and get the ballot to the voter.
Whose responsibility is it to verify the identity of the voters? At FAP or is that the state?
That would be the local election office who receives the federal postcard application.
So it's the state's responsibility to still to confirm the identity of the individual.
Correct.
All right. No further questions. I yield back. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Morelle, for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank again the witnesses for being here. You know, we have advanced a number of ideas that would have increased access for military and overseas voters, ample notice and cure periods for ballot errors, online voter registration, in addition to the postcard, improvements to UOCAVA. You know, and the president, sadly, as I said earlier, spreads all this mis and disinformation about voting abroad without any proof. But I'm curious, if a voter makes a mistake on their ballot and it doesn't arrive in time for them to have an opportunity to cure a mistake, particularly in those states that allow it, how do you work with voters to ensure that they have, one, the information necessary to cast a ballot and that they know of the requirements set forth by the various states?
Thank you, Ranking Member Morelle. So we work closely with states. We have also a hotline that voters can call directly if they do get a notice from their state, if there's an issue that might arise while that ballot request or the ballot is being processed, so that we can call the state directly, provide information from the voter to the local election official, and perhaps they can work that out. Of course, timing is of the essence. Again, as I said, we encourage folks to start the process as early as possible, take full advantage of that 45-day window, and not wait right up until the day of the election to start the process or to make those calls.
I mentioned earlier that the SAVE Act would end a number of things that would affect UOCAVA voters. For instance, it would no longer have the ability to mail in the postcard to register to vote. How would I assume you've taken a look at the SAVE Act, perhaps not, or the President's executive order. How would requirements such as that, how would they impact the UOCAVA voter? Have you done any analysis? You would not be able to register any longer if you're overseas.
Thank you for the question. We're aware of the SAVE Act and the proposed legislation, as well as the executive orders. I did want to just clarify, too, that the federal postcard application form, we do look at updating that every 2 years anyway. Right now, we understand that the court case is under, or the EO is under litigation right now, and we stand ready to change the form if then needed. But I did want to let you know that we do update that form every 2 years to see if there are.
But that form wouldn't be under the executive order, well, and under the SAVE Act, you couldn't, there would be only in-person registration. So people couldn't, members of the military or overseas individuals could no longer register to vote unless they went to their local office.
Understand, Ranking Member, with the current legislation that is being proposed from a departmental perspective, once that legislation comes back to us, we can go through our formal congressional protocols to provide response to that. Right now, we stand waiting to see what comes through and waiting for the court cases to
yeah, clear. No. But if they were, you agree with me that would make it, I mean, have you read the plain English reading of the statute or the proposed statute, that it would end online registration for overseas and military voters?
The department remains, committed to providing a formal congressional response once that legislation comes to us.
So I wanted to just take up, and I only have a minute or so left of my time, but it is striking to me that only 26% of military voters who are registered cast ballot. I mean, that is really a small number and one that's troubling. The fewer than 4% of overseas voters who are non-uniform cast ballots. That is staggering to me. When you look at that, you must think we've got to get this number. I'm assuming, I hope that that's your desire. Can you give me 2 things that you're working on right now that would dramatically increase both numbers?
Yes. So obviously, it's a voter's choice as to whether or not they want to participate in the process and whether they want to register and ultimately cast a ballot. But we
But,
do
but
have.
I get that, but I think you'd acknowledge that 3% or 3.4% for overseas voters, there's clearly something else. I mean, it would be odd for overseas voters to choose at a 97% rate not to vote versus, the number that my friend, the chairman, cited for people who are in the Continental or live in the United States.
So we send out 90, 60, and 30-day reminder notices to all members of the military. That also goes out through State Department channels, through the mascot messaging services to overseas citizens who have registered with the State Department to say that I'm overseas living in a particular country. Those reminders go out monthly during the election year to say these are your elections, these are the states that have primaries coming up.
Yeah, so I'm sorry to interrupt, and I've run out of time, but those are things that you currently do, which is no disrespect, but they're not, obviously not. I was curious as to what things you're thinking about right now that you can do to move that needle dramatically in the direction of greater participation.
So again, our purpose is to ensure that the voters have the understanding that they're able to vote under federal law for those federal offices, and that they have the tools and resources to do so if they wish.
But not to do anything or facilitate anything that would encourage greater participation.
Correct. We're not a get out the vote campaign. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Loudermilk is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. It's a very important subject. When I was active duty, I made every effort to vote when I knew there was an election going on. It was very easy, being overseas, there was a lot of help during a presidential election. There's a lot of attention going on. But I found it more difficult during midterm elections, which in Georgia, that's when our gubernatorial election is. And more specifically, local, county, and some state elections that may be off cycle. And part of it was even knowing that a specific election was going on. Really, for both of you, is there attention made to these non-federal elections to active duty military?
Thank you for the question. If you haven't gone to the ff.gov website, I highly recommend it. It's a wealth of knowledge that's for military members, military spouses, as well as overseas citizens. It also has links directly to each state and then each jurisdiction. But to your point of increasing that awareness, our goal is to make sure that every UOCAVA eligible voter has access to that and is able to link back to their particular state or their locality. But Mr. Weedman, can you provide a bit more information on exactly what you do?
Yeah, so we have a requirement, and the services help us to ensure that every member receives a federal postcard application form, either electronically or some sort of notice in every January 15th of every year. So that's not just the even-numbered years, and then again in July of the even-numbered years. So if the voter sends that form in to that state or local election office, they would get whatever ballots would come to them during that calendar year.
All right. I appreciate that, and I can remember during the times that I was in, often our squadron commander would send out something advising there is an election going on, you encourage you to vote. Is that something that you get engagement by commanders, unit commanders, to interface, at least to let the troops know that there is election going on?
Yes, through the military services, there's the entire chain of command. There's a service voting action officer for each service that we meet with monthly. And then each installation has an installation voting assistance officer, as well as a brick and mortar voter assistance office. And that's typically like in the Military or Family Readiness Center, where families can go as well to get assistance, as well as the members.
Okay, thank you. Director Weedman, while I've got you, from your experience, are ballots of military voters deployed on active duty orders susceptible to voter fraud?
We facilitate the connectivity between that voter and that local election official. And then once the election official receives that, they're the ones who would review the ballot for validity and authenticity.
So you're taking it from the service member and delivering it to the local elections office or the state Is that what you're referring to?
The Military Postal Service Agency, when it's dropped off at a military post office on an installation, will take that, and they're an extension of the U.S. Postal Service, and then they'll have that delivered to Chicago, and then from there it goes into the U.S. Postal Service.
Okay. What steps does FVAP take to ensure election integrity is upheld when assisting service members with voter registration?
So a person who is assigned as a voting officer does that job in a nonpartisan way.
Okay.
Just basically there to facilitate the process. FAP provides FAP.gov and the tools and materials. That local voting officer knows that installation, knows the circumstance they're in, whether it be a submarine or forward deployed, and then will help the voters to navigate the process locally.
How would that fit in with the uniqueness of certain states and election laws, i.e. in Georgia, you have to show an ID to be able to register to vote as well as to vote. Do you take in consideration of the local election laws when you're registering votes?
So we work with those state and local election offices. This book, all the information we provide in here and on our website is signed off by the chief state election official in every state. We work with Blake Evans in the Secretary of State's office for Georgia to ensure that everything is accurate and up to date. So when a voter fills this out, it will be accepted by the Georgia County, and the Georgia County would then be able to send that ballot out to the voter.
Okay, thank you. Last question. Are you aware of any credible reporting of bad actors committing voter fraud through UOCAVA ballots?
I am not.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Representative Sewell is recognized for 5 minutes for
I want to
questions.
thank our witnesses for being here today. As the ranking member over the Election Subcommittee, as well as the author of the John Robert Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, I think there's nothing more important and fundamental to our democracy than the right to vote, and ensuring that every eligible voter has an opportunity to cast a ballot, I think is top and foremost what you all are supposed to do with respect to our service members and those living overseas. So often I hear from my service members that they don't have an opportunity to cure any problem that may happen with the ballot because of timing. And then I also get a lot of complaints in my office that they don't receive the ballot in time. So I guess my question to you, Director, is what are you doing to work with United Postal Services to make sure that that service members and overseas citizens get their ballots in time? Or maybe that's, yeah.
Thank you, Representative Sewell. So we work closely with the U.S. Postal Service as well as the Military Postal Service Agency to ensure that all of the materials that we provide have that postage indicia, so it's postage free in U.S. mails. We also provide the ballot template envelope for state and local officials, so when they print those ballots to be sent out to the voters, those have that postage indicia on there as well.
Yeah, I know that the postage is free. It's just the timing of receiving it. And I get that, the states administer their own elections, but, we administer federal elections and want to make sure that folks get their ballots in a timely fashion. I don't know, Dr. Clark, if you have anything else to add about what we could be doing now to ensure that people get timely ballots. And obviously, if there's a mistake, being able to cure that in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and as Mr. Weedman mentioned as well, we have the federal right and absentee ballot. So if there are challenges with the state, with a service member or UOCAVA eligible voter receiving their ballot, they are able to then submit the federal right and absentee ballot as well. But I think it comes down to ensuring that we're promoting that awareness and that education, and that the military services and the installations and the units are also taking this seriously. Yeah. And that it's a priority as well. So we've done a significant amount of work to make sure that we're promoting that awareness, making those tools and resources available, as well as trying to make it as seamless as we possibly can for the UOCAVA eligible voter. And when Mr. Weedman's talked about this voting assistance guide, it has QR codes that takes you directly to that state. Our goal here is to make sure that we recognize that voting is a personal choice.
It is, but I mean, if you want to ensure that eligible voters have an opportunity to vote, and I understand the importance of informing them that elections are going on. Your role, obviously, I understand, is not to register voters, but it is to ensure that our service members and those who are eligible overseas have an opportunity to cast a ballot. I think that the FVAP has been, well, the changes to it that have been proposed in the court system, as well as through the executive order of the president, I think that the federal postcard can be very complicated, and I know that that's tied up in litigation. Until that has been truly litigated, we're still practicing under the existing laws, is that right?
That's correct. Mr. Reedman, anything to add specifically on that?
No, that's correct. The federal postcard application, and then our process, as I said, is we're ramping up for 2026. Part of that process is to review the forms for changes.
Have
that
you
may be
received any
required.
complaints from service members or overseas about the postcard itself?
No.
Would you be the appropriate person that they would lodge those complaints to?
Well, if it's something to do with the processing of the form or the layout of the form, they would come to us and let us know so that we could incorporate that into redesigns as we do every 2 years. If it's something to do with a person's rights being abridged, then they would go to the Department of Justice, which is the enforcement body.
Is the FVAP still committed to leveraging other governmental resources to keep all of the eligible service members informed of how they can exercise their right to vote?
Yes, ma'am.
I too, like the ranking member, quite concerned that the percentage of voters that are overseas and their service members is around 26%, whereas in the United States, those that vote, it's about 48%. Both need to go up to more than 50, in my opinion, but is there anything that you guys are doing right now that would help in reducing that gap?
So we look at we call it the UOCAVA gap. So there's going to be some folks that would not want to vote, but there's a short or a small number of folks that may have wanted to vote but weren't able to. And those are the folks we try to target with our messaging through social media and whatnot to ensure, again, that they have that knowledge that they're able to vote and that they have a links to ffap.gov, and that once they get there, they click the button to say, register to vote here, and everything they need in order to register to vote in their state is provided to them, and then they can send that request directly to their county.
Well, sir, obviously, all of us are committed to making sure that folks get an opportunity to cast a vote who are eligible. And so whatever we can do, I'd be interested in making sure we can partner with you to make that happen. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record 2 statements. One from the Secure Families Initiative, an organization that works on behalf of active duty military families, and a second from U.S. Vote Foundation, an organization that works on behalf of all overseas voters on the ways UOCAVA works for military and overseas voters.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from North Carolina, Dr. Murphy, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both for coming here today, and thank you for your contributions that are helping our service members and those abroad participate in the process of voting. I'm honored to represent 3 military installations in eastern North Carolina, totaling more than 50,000 active duty service members. And we obviously want them to participate in the process if they want to participate in the process. So I appreciate you guys doing this. North Carolina is a popular destination for people moving to the U.S. In fact, we're sinking a little bit because so many people are moving here, especially on the Outer Banks. But many North Carolinians also choose to live abroad. Appreciate what you guys are doing to help educate individuals through UOCAVA for the opportunity to vote. And I'm remiss, I have not gone on your website, but I look forward to doing that today because it sounds like there's a great deal of information there. To what Ranking Member Morelle said about only 3% of individuals voting overseas, that's amazing to me. Maybe they're in Bali and they just don't want to be bothered. Maybe, I don't know, but that 3% does seem like a very low amount. Let me ask you this. You guys, what kind of educational materials that are you able to provide to UOCAVA to voters who are located near the embassy in countries? And then for folks that don't live near the embassy in a lot of other countries. I wonder if you could educate me on that.
Yes, thank you, Representative Murphy. So we work very closely with the State Department, and they have the American Citizen Services Desk at every embassy and consulate, so that if an American needs a new passport or some sort of other service for American citizens, they go there to get that. And one of the things they do is provide assistance, voting assistance. So anybody behind that glass when the American citizen walks in will be able to get the same assistance that a voter would get from a voting officer in the military. They also post a ballot receptacle closer out to the street so that a voter doesn't necessarily have to go in all the way through the security in order to drop off a ballot or to get the assistance if they have already printed out the form and done that. Of course, all of the materials that we print, from the guidebook to the forms to the various wallet cards and whatnot, are also provided to the State Department, so they can, if someone gets a new passport, for instance, they'll put the wallet card that says ffap.gov in there, and then they'll be able to have that. But one key messaging point is that mascot messaging I mentioned earlier, which is when you move to a country, you sign up through the Department of State and say, I'm living in this country, so that if there's a natural disaster or some other reason they may need to evacuate Americans, they can send them messages quickly. One of the things they can do with those messaging is send out voting messages. They can use it for other things, and voting is one of those.
Yeah, it sounds like y'all are doing a tremendous job. I'm not quite sure what more you can do. You can lead a horse to water, but if people don't want to vote, they don't want to vote. And if they're overseas, maybe they like living in the country that they're in, and they identify more with the politics there than they do back home. But anyway, thank you. Let me ask you a couple other questions. As I mentioned, I have a lot of active duty military that are oftentimes abroad overseas. Can you talk about the FVAP's digital presence and how we're able to do that for turnout? How do we reach out to those individuals?
Yes, sir. So we have an outreach campaign. We take advantage of paid, earned, shared, and owned media, both in social media and online. We have efforts with the local election officials where we have like outreach toolkits that are digital, so that any individual that's with an overseas citizen organization, a State Department person, or a military person can download those digital toolkits, and then on their own
Do you
social
think
media
those
accounts.
have, given the technology age, what trends have you seen? Do you think those make a difference, or are we still seeing the same trends in participation that we've seen historically?
So the participation generally goes along with interest in the election. Part of the surveys that we do, we ask about what their individual's interest was in the election, as well as their participation, and you can see how it tracks over time. When the interest is high, the participation is generally higher in the election.
But have those curves been pretty much identical over the last decades? Interest. Okay. It just stands to reason. People who are living abroad, if they have an interest back home, they're going to participate in something, especially if a presidential election. But I can see, just like it does in the U.S., midterms, people wane off and they lose their interest. So I'll end with that. Thank you for your service. You're doing a great job. I mean, I don't know how else you can get to people other than go to their homes and offer them a ride, which we don't need to do. But thank you for your service. Yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you both for being here today. In April, my colleagues on the Republican side passed the SAVE Act, which further restricts married women, naturalized citizens, and our military members overseas from exercising their ability to vote. I want to specifically point out that this bill does not include any exemptions for our service members, and instead would require them to register to vote in person in the United States, creating a significant administrative and financial burden. I proposed an amendment to allow folks to register to vote by mail, which in this country has been doing safely for decades, and that amendment was voted down by Republicans on this committee and again in the House floor. And this is very troubling to me. So I have some questions about when our service members enlist to serve in the military, are they automatically registered to vote?
Thank you, Representative Johnson. They're not automatically registered to vote. However, they're given the tools and training to know that they have the opportunity to vote. Once they're enlisted, they're on active duty.
Right.
And then they have those
So
tools
if they're
and
not
resources provided.
registered to vote at the time they're enlisted, then they want to register to vote. Under the SAVE Act, they would be required to physically leave their station post abroad and fly to their home residential jurisdiction to register to vote. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. With the SAVE Act specifically, the department will take that for the record with a formal response back.
I understand that, but we passed that law, so we know what the law is, and I'm understanding you're not really wanting to comment on it, but I'm trying to ask some questions about the practical applicability to that. So if, under that law, though, what hurdles would a service member have to do to get leave to be able to fly home and register to vote in their county if they wanted to exercise their right to vote if that bill ultimately succeeds?
We'll take that for the record.
Would they have to take a leave to fly home?
Oh, we'll have to take that for the record.
I'm sorry, what?
We'll have to take that for the record.
So you're not going to answer my question?
I mean, due to the breadth and depth of the legislation, the department will take it back and go
Well,
through
my
our formal
question is not
protocols.
taking it back for the record. My question is, what steps would a service member have to do to take a leave of absence to be able to come home to register to vote? What's involved in that?
Yes, ma'am, it's outside of my portfolio when we're looking at the entitlements and the benefits to the specific service member, so I'll have to take that back for the record.
Okay. So because I'm just very troubled by that whole situation. Anyway, the next question I have is, how many employees does FVAP currently have? And has this changed since January? And has the administration's federal hiring freeze impacted FVAP's ability to conduct its mission?
We currently have 7 employees, and we are able to carry out the requirements under UOCAVA.
Has your employees been reduced in force since January? Has that level changed since that time?
We have had a couple of our employees who have taken retirement packages.
How many employees of your agency took early retirement pursuant to the administration's RIF?
3.
3. And you have 7, so 30% of your workforce? Is that right? And do you need any additional resources or funding in order to carry out your mission?
Under the current resources and funding, we're able to carry out the requirements of the law.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a statement from Janessa Goldbeck, a Marine Corps veteran, former voting assistance officer, and the CEO of Vet Voice Foundation, a nonpartisan organization of nearly 2 million veterans and military families nationwide.
Without objection.
Thank you for your time, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Carey, is recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to thank the chairman and thank the ranking member. You know, one of the greatest privileges we have as American citizens is the right to determine the direction of our country every 2 to 4 years. The great American experiment, which is closing in on our 250th birthday, has proved that this right for all Americans, regardless of class, religion, race, or creed. However, many of our citizens who are overseas find it difficult to participate in the state and local and federal elections, particularly among our U.S. service members. And as a veteran myself, I find it critical that we give every opportunity for our military members to register for elections. That is why the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act and the Federal Voting Assistance Program are necessary to ensure that service members who want to have their vote have the ability to actually vote. Now, I'm going to ask you just a couple quick questions. I'm the last one to ask questions. So, Director and Dr. Clark, what metrics does the Federal Voting Assistance Program use to determine if the efforts to provide the opportunity for military and overseas voters to vote are successful? You can both go. It doesn't matter.
Thank you, Representative Carey. So we look at the awareness of the program and the awareness of folks' ability to utilize the tools and resources available to them. We also ask the voting assistance officers how well the materials that we provided, both the book itself and the online presence, if that was a useful tool for them. And we usually get ratings in the 90s of people finding it useful as they're delivering voting assistance.
Let me ask you, because you pointed to that book a couple of times, and I know that we on this committee have tried to been making sure that we modernize the way things are done. The online presence with the information that's in the book is readily available to everybody, correct?
Correct, and it's up to date. This book is printed every 2 years because we want to make sure that we have something out there for folks who may not have internet access or having a voting assistance or voting registration drive. They can refer to the book, but the online information is updated real time. So, you might have an election office who, in a particular Ohio county, that changes their address, and we can get that updated on the website.
So has FEP increased its outreach and education to the U.S. service members overseas, in your opinion?
We continually seek out new ways to reach out to folks that would fit and target folks directly, especially that 18 to 24-year-old cohort.
Okay. So let me ask the director and doctor, how many early prior to an election are the UCAVA ballots sent to service members? How many are usually sent out? Do you have any idea?
So in the 2022 election, I believe there were 754,000, sent out. In 2020 election, 1.2 million ballots were sent out to military and overseas voters.
And what's usually the time frame that the service members would get those ballots?
So depending on how, when they use the form, they say if they want the ballot to be delivered to them by mail or email, or if a state has an online server that they can download it from. So that's the voter's choice on how they want to receive that. So the states have to provide the ballots 45 days before a election for federal office. So they'll put it either in the mail or they'll put them online and send an email to the voter saying, hey, your ballot's now available, and then they can have that at that point.
So historically, do you think this is enough time for a service member to receive and then cast their ballot to be counted in time on Election Day?
Based on the Military Postal Service Agency's recommended mailing dates, 30 days is the maximum time for folks aboard ship and deployed overseas, so the 45 days should suffice.
Okay. All right, well, I want to thank you both for being here today. I want to again thank the chairman and the ranking member, and with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. We thank both of our witnesses for being here today on a really important topic. Appreciate your work in the area. I think there's also room for improvement as we work to get more members to participate in the election process. Members of the committee may have some additional questions. We ask you to please respond to those questions in writing. Without objection, each member will have 5 legislative days to insert additional material into the record or to advise and extend the remark. If there's no further business, I thank the members for their participation. Without objection, the committee stands adjourned.